Video, we're going to actually look at how do you design characters when you're given a description. So I was able to procure this description for a character through this charactergenerator.org.uk website. I will put a link to that in the description. It's pretty fantastic with regards to giving you a very detailed description based upon parameters that you can input. It also has prompts that you can add. Pretty good stuff. So let's take a look and see how we would analyze what information is going to be the most important in terms of being able to develop a character design for this character. So we know it's a male, Carlos Zachary Russell. He's a 24-year-old lab assistant. So he is kind of a young man and lab assistant. So lab assistant's a kind of a key word. He's British. He defines himself as straight. He finished school, then left academia. Physically, Carlos is slightly overweight, but otherwise in good shape. So he's kind of stout, and he is tall with olive skin, brown hair, and blue eyes. He grew up in a working class neighborhood, having never really known his parents. He was raised in a series of foster homes. So this gives me kind of a little bit of an idea of maybe what to think about. So the first thing I need to know here is his build and his sex. So he's male, he is slightly overweight, but otherwise in good shape. So I'm going to start with that. Now the olive skin, the brown hair, and the blue eyes, those are details that come in towards the end of the design phase. But I'm talking about working through silhouettes, and I want to look at the physical attributes that are going to be important in the silhouette. So it's going to be he is tall, right? That's a physical trait. He is slightly overweight but otherwise in good shape. So those are the things I'm going to zone in on. And plus he's also a lab assistant. Okay? There are other parameters in here that I can add when I start to drill into this character and get more details, but for right now this is kind of giving me something to work with. So he grew up in a working class neighborhood. He's been in a series of foster homes. So, maybe he's not coming from a well-to-do environment, and so he's just a character that might not necessarily have like matching clothes, or he might just be a little bit disheveled in appearance. So let's go ahead and keep this description in mind, and let's just start out. So first thing I'm going to do is, now that I have this description, and I'll just actually put this description down below just so that I can have it as reference, and I'll make a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and start out with using my vertical symmetry tool, and I'm just going to start out right here. And so we know he's a lab assistant. He is tall. So let's see, if we want to emphasize tallness, then we want to think about the proportions of his head and his body to his legs. So tall people have really long legs, right? So that might be where I start out with. And then he might have like a medium build for his body, and his head might be smaller, right? So those are the attributes that I have to work with. And if I think about like his basic features, that's what I'm starting out with. And I can now play with that idea. I can move this over to the side, and let's try a few variations. In character design, you never want to be just beholden to one design. You want to try out different things. So what if we we need to kind of think about the fact that he's slightly overweight. So maybe I'll push that a little bit more, and I'll just kind of lengthen the feet. And put the hands down here. Might give him some bigger hands. Okay, so that's another variation, right? And I'll keep going until I have about maybe 5 or 6 of these to kind of play with. Maybe I'll just really play up the overweightness, so I'll give him a little bit more of a pear-shaped body, but then also make him tall. You know, give him a little bit of a neck. So I'm not worried about hairstyles or other things like that at this phase. I'm just thinking about his physical attributes that I can you know, experiment and play with. So I've got a third one right here. I'll do a couple more. Actually, let me just move this one over here to the side. Let's now really kind of exaggerate, since there's no wrong answers here. We're looking at something that's going to satisfy the description in a way that is going to, you know, enhance the story that's being told. Let me just shrink him down a little bit because I'm running out of room. And let's give him a little bit more of a rounded or like a dome-shaped head. You know, we'll give him a little bit more of a pronounced shoulder. Alright, so that's my fourth iteration. And I'll just do one more for giggles. So this time I'll give him kind of a square jaw. Give him more of a trapezoidal body shape. I'll scale this guy down. Right, so I've got that. Now I can turn off the symmetry tool and just look at some of the contenders that I have to work with. Right, so in this particular case, if we're emphasizing a character's height, the largest attribute is going to be the legs. Right. The next thing is he is slightly overweight. Right, so you know, I don't want to make him too ballooned, so maybe some of these iterations right here may be a little bit too much. This is not slightly overweight, so I kind of exaggerated that. This is really overweight, you know, in the stomach, so that's not really a contender. This is not too bad. This gives you the hint of maybe a little bit overweight. Same with this one, and same with this one. The idea is you're kind of emphasizing the gut area. It's just being a little bit more heavy set. So I have some contenders to work with. Now typically if I'm working through designs, I'll go through multiple variations of this. I'll look at references, I go on Pinterest, I go on all sorts of sites to go ahead and kind of look at various body shapes, and just to kind of mentally get myself in that mode of you know, like designing this character. So now that I have this, you know, in order to create the silhouettes, what I can do is I can just block those out. So you don't have to, you know, when you're making a silhouette, it doesn't have to be fully covering, you know, you don't have to like draw like a black fill to make that a strong silhouette. This is still going to be clear enough to read, like, you know, the basic silhouette structure. But what I plan on doing is, now that I have this in place, I will take it to the next level. So I'll just go ahead and I'll shrink these guys down a little bit and just put them on a layer. I'll just call this initial, and I'll duplicate what I have, and I'll hide the other things, and I'll kind of zoom in. So here's where I would go ahead and say, all right, so maybe if I'm trying to go ahead and give this lab coat thing, I'll just go ahead and draw this lab coat, looking at some references. You know, I might make his neck a little bit higher up. I can go ahead and change that around. I mean, he is a young guy, right? He's 24. And maybe his you know, he's tall, so maybe his hands kind of stick out like that. I'll make the legs like razor thin. And so now I've got, you know, his profession, right? I can, you know, kind of accentuate that by, you know, making his pants somewhat short to maybe show that, you know, he's not like super stylish. His clothes, maybe he's outgrown his clothes. This gives me some idea of his personality. And I'll do the same thing for the other ones here too. I'll just go ahead and say, all right, well, what if I lower his neck? And what if I give him a little bit more of a bullet head, right? And then what if his lab coat is such that the lab coat is somewhat small on him? That could be a little bit interesting, right? Gives us an idea of personality. And so now we've got that. So here's the second variation. Right? And again, not worried about the details yet. I'm just thinking about his personality. I'm thinking about his build, right? I know his relative age. And now let me look at a third one here too. So I'll take this third one here and say, all right, well, he's maybe just a little bit overweight. So I'll kind of slim, you know, make his shoulders a little bit less broad. And then he's got his lab coat, so maybe I'll make the lab coat really long, right? And let's just go ahead and give him a little slightly taller head. So you can vary it up, right? You're not limited to, you know, just, you know, following exactly what you have in your silhouette. So these are like 3 designs that I've come up with that just focus on the body shape. So I can group that together. I'll just call this body. And then from this point, what I can do is I will use the lasso tool, since I don't have these all filled out. I'll just go ahead and I'm going to just do one, but the other ones you can apply it in the same way. Right, so I'll just take this and fill this in. So that's the silhouette, right? It's, well, there we go. That's the silhouette. And I can probably just add a little bit of separation for his legs. But notice how the hands are, you can't really see the hands. So I have to cut into the shape a little bit or do something with his hands to make the silhouette read better. Because right now, it's you can't really tell much about this guy. You don't even know if he's wearing a lab coat or not. So I can come back in with my lasso tool and I can say, all right, well, let me just chop his hands. And let's just go ahead and open those arms out. Right? And I can say, all right, well, here's his hands. If he's going to be tall, he's going to have big hands. Kind of move them out a little bit. And now with the silhouette tool, I can start to think about his, you know, other attributes. Like, okay, if he's going to be disheveled, maybe his clothes aren't going to totally fit him. So I'll kind of make the pants up a little bit high. Or conversely, I could have the pants almost like comically too large for his large frame. That could be interesting too. I can now say, all right, well, if he's disheveled, maybe his hair. Again, using the lasso tool and filling it in. Could be like this. So this is kind of giving me some idea. It's not, there's a little bit more of a description of who this character is now compared to what we had before. And, if he's got a lab coat, maybe there's some vials and other things that are kind of like sticking out of his pockets, right? Maybe he's got a clipboard or something else that gives us some idea of who he is, right? So there's like a couple of test tubes. I don't know. I mean, maybe his shoes are going to be kind of like bulky on the front end. So this is how I can construct that silhouette, and I can do that, as many times as I need to get a good feel for what this character might look like. And then I want to make sure that as I do this, that I'm always servicing the story. I want to make sure that the character that I'm designing here actually fits the description. So let's pull up the description again. I'll move this description up and hide the other layers here. So, okay, he's a 24-year-old lab assistant. He's slightly overweight. Well, I'm not really getting the overweight stuff here. So what I can do is I can cut him out a little bit and just use the scale tool here, or the transform tool, just to kind of move it out. Excuse me. And so like we have this, like, now you can see that his frame kind of expands outward a little bit more. That can give him that sense of being a little bit more overweight. Let's see, he's in otherwise good shape, so maybe I'll just square off the top part here, and maybe I'll have the lab coat kind of hang over. I can give him a longish neck. That might be kind of interesting. He might have like a collar for that lab coat. There might be, a pencil sticking out of the side of his head. I mean, these are all little things that I could go ahead and include. Whoops. So that I can go ahead and get a better feel for this character. And I would do that for the other two versions that I already have, right? So at this point, I'm still dealing with shape. What I might want to do here is just go ahead and kind of accentuate the height. I'll make his lab coat kind of a little bit shorter so you can see more of his legs, right? And from this point, I have something that I can work with to flesh out the character design a little bit more. I might even throw in some heels for his shoes, right? Maybe he's got these weird laces. Maybe the laces are kind of, untied, right? That gives us some insight into his personality. He's got this disheveled hair, and he's kind of looking a little bit clunky. So I would kind of proceed in that fashion. So this is how I would use both the combination of the symmetry tool as well as the lasso tool to really drill into what this guy looks like. Now, is this the final version? No, absolutely not. This is just one take on the character, but I wanted you to see how I think through this design process, because I think it's really, really important. I think far too many times when I see students working on their projects, if they're asked to design a character, they just come up with one character and that's it. And that's not really design. It's just coming up with a character. How effective is that character? Does that character fit the story that's being told? What are you trying to target? What is the demographic audience that you're trying to hit? These are all questions that you want to think about as you're designing your character. Like, is this going to go into a TV show that's going to be, more like, I don't know, for like 12 to 17-year-olds? Or is it going to be like something that's going to be more adult, or what? It's like you want to really think about who your target audience is when you're designing these characters. So in the next video, I will talk more about, character construction and how do you go from shape to fleshing out a character to make that character dimensional and have some form. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was useful. Let me know, and I will see you in the next one.